Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to make simple, effective, curved belt sander platens. Alright, so I'm waiting for the last couple of joints to dry and I can start smoothing these inside curves. Well, I could do the outside curves too. I'm going to use a belt sander. The outside curves are simple. You just go around there with a belt sander. These inside curves, you can't really use a belt sander because it just doesn't contact right. But let me show you something. So these are a collection that I've made over the years they're a curved platen, and they anchor to my belt sander with the factory screws. There's factory holes in the belt sander, and these curves will, after they're attached to the belt sander, I can easily sand these inside radiuses. So I'm trying to find one that matches. 30 inches bigger than what I have. I've got a 26 1/8. I got to be smaller, right? If it's bigger, then it contacts here and here. It doesn't really quite work right. 20 would probably work. It's a little bit small. You can see how it rocks. 16 is too small. That one's way big. 30. So yeah, I've got a lot of different 60-inch radius. Oh, here's a 23. This one will probably work. Yeah. So I did an article in Furniture and Cabinet Making Magazine. I believe that was issue 260 about how to make these. That one's gonna work fantastic. So we can start with maybe 120 grit, smooth that out, end up with about 180, and this will produce a beautiful, fair, flat curve. This other radius here is a 52 5/8. I don't really have anything that's gonna fit that. So I'm just gonna grab a chunk of Baltic birch, and we're gonna make one. I used to make them out of solid wood, but as they heat up, they can tend to warp, and the Baltic birch is much more stable. So let's go ahead and make this guy, yeah? So I start out with a chunk of Baltic birch. This is, I believe, 15 millimeter or about 5/8. And my particular belt sander, they're 4x24s. So of course I'm 4 inches wide and 6 inches long on my belt sander seems to be about the right length. So I can just easily put this here. It's really nothing critical. We're just trying to match that radius. And you can see these tops still have glue on them. They need cleaned up. And these steps, this is what we're going to clean up. These are from the routers, different passes on with the router straight bit, making those cuts. So we're going to clean all that up. So I'm just eyeballing this. We're just going to get it close. I mean, this distance and that one. It's really not critical. I'm going to mark that. Right? And then we'll cut this with the bandsaw. So I have several blocks with 90 degrees, a known 90 degrees, and those are really handy for something like this. So here's our mark. Let's put some double stick tape on here. We want this cut to be pretty true, you know. Can't just be slicing it all willy-nilly. That wouldn't do us any good. Okay, so there we go. We have that. There's our mark. Nice and flat, 90 degrees. Boom, we're ready to make a cut. Oops, I just about forgot my little shop-made shroud with magnets. So you can see why I use the 90-degree block. It's really important to get that curve, you know, really consistent from one end to the other. And the 90-degree block helps keep everything true. Here I just switched grits to something a little smoother, touch everything up, and we're ready to go. All right, so this is pretty straightforward. We're just gonna anchor some of this banding. This is just regular old hardened steel banding, right? And I ease these edges, the trailing and leading edge, just so that belt will feed a little easier. And you can see these factory, on this particular belt sander, you can see these factory screws. Originally, these were on here with a metal, yeah, you need that little washer, with a little plate across there and a metal platen, but they're horrible. The factory ones, they warp. Once, you know, there's a lot of friction there, so they warp, they heat up, and they distort your work. I get rid of those immediately and replace them with these graphite pads. These things are fantastic. You can see this one here, I must have used it a lot and I must have realized I needed to keep that really slick and smooth, so I went ahead and put graphite on that one. But in general, these are just, there's plenty slick enough, especially after they've been ran for a little bit. But so we're just going to mark some holes. We're going to create a small angle to match that, and then attach it to the back of this. They're not pretty, but it does not matter. They work amazingly well. So you can see the two outside ones are a little bit far apart from each other to work. So it looks like I use an inside and an outside one, something like that. So you might come up with a better way to mark these. I don't feel like it's all that critical. You do want that platen to ride on the bottom of the belt sander nice and true, but I'm just marking these by hand, and by anchoring them to the belt sander first, it gives me the opportunity to put the platen exactly where I want it. Okay, so I just noticed that arrow, and you may have noticed that arrow on the belt. That doesn't matter on belt sanders. That arrow is directional on some large equipment, and this paper, the sandpaper, is made for a lot of different machines, but on a belt it won't matter. The diagonal seam on that belt will be going the same direction whether you flip that around or not. Here we go. You can see the curve of this platen, and let's check it out in action. These things work amazingly well. Pretty easy to make, and you know, this belt sander doesn't know the difference whether it's sanding flat or sanding an inside curve. I just need to make sure that I stay square, so I check, you know, pretty routinely, make sure I'm staying square. And of course, here on this inside corner, I couldn't get in there with a belt sander, so I just have this sanding block with hook and loop. These things are fantastic. Check it out. Simple curve, hook and loop, easy to switch grits, fantastic. A little bit of wind in this next video. I apologize, bear with me. All right, so here's my workhorses for getting these radiuses smoothed out. This one has a 23-inch curved platen on it for in here. Of course, I've got flat areas, and the outside radius will be done with this guy. That one's just flat. Then this guy has a 52-inch radius curved platen for this area here. So between all three, I can handle all the edges. Like I mentioned earlier, the outside and the straight areas are pretty easy to do with a flat platen. Of course, I still check with a square to make sure everything stays true. All right, getting everything nice and smooth and flat. So I'm using a belt sander. It's a 4x24, so it has a 4" by 6" platen, and that's going to get everything flat. This guy here, that'll sand smooth, but they don't really get flat. I mean, they do okay, but on the edges, that hook and loop is going to create a soft area that will round those edges. This dude, it makes everything flat. So beautiful joints, everything's coming out really good. You can see a little bit of glue staining right there, that's why I have that circled. Of course, that's the field joint, I won't mess with that. But all this is coming out really good. There's a seam, there it goes, focus, right there. So yeah, I'm about running out of daylight, but fantastic day, getting everything smoothed, radiused, routed, and sanded. So hopefully tomorrow we can put some conversion varnish on this. All right, so there you have it. A super effective way to sand smooth and consistent inside curves with a belt sander. Here's some finished shots. Not the best pictures in the world. As a matter of fact, they're pretty bad. But anyway, hope you got some use out of this. Thanks a ton for watching.